You know how it is, right? You're scrolling online and you know how it is, right? You're scrolling online and suddenly you see it, a picture of a tiny primate or maybe a super colorful python. And you think, wow, I kind of want one of those. The appeal is, it's huge. But what's hiding just behind that picture is this massive, really complex global industry. And it's got some serious hidden consequences. So yeah, let's dive into it. This quote really just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? That feeling, that desire for something special and unique is what drives a trade that is just staggering in its size. And, when you actually see the numbers, the reality of what's happening becomes, well, it's pretty hard to ignore. Okay, get ready for this number. Over 1 billion. That's with a B. That's how many wildlife specimens were imported into just the United States in only 13 years. And listen to this. A third of them were live animals, and you can bet the huge majority of those were headed straight for the pet industry. It's just a mind-boggling scale. And this is definitely not just a US problem. To give you an idea of how global this is, that's the number of reptiles brought into the European Union over about the same time period. We're talking about tens of millions of animals being shipped all over the world, every single year. So what happens when you have a trade this big with this many different animals? Well, you get a whole mess of really serious, tangled up problems. Problems that affect the animals, our own health, and yep, the environment too. So let's actually unpack these hidden costs. It really boils down to three major crises. First off, there's a huge animal welfare crisis happening at pretty much every step of the process. Second, there are some very real risks to our own health and safety. And third, this trade is a major, major source of environmental chaos because of invasive species. The part of this that's really chilling is that phrase industry standard. An investigation found that for one of the big international pet wholesalers, a 72% death rate was just normal. The cost of doing business. This wasn't some horrible one-off event. It was the baseline expectation. And the problem absolutely does not stop when the animal gets to a store. For reptiles, which are some of the most popular exotic pets out there, up to 75% of them die within the first year in someone's home. That's a huge red flag that there's a serious mismatch between what these animals need and the care we're actually able to give them. Okay, let's switch gears to that second problem, public health. Research shows that about 3/4 of new infectious diseases, the ones that pop up in people, they come from animals. The wildlife trade, by its very nature, brings us into super close contact with all sorts of wild species, basically creating a perfect storm for diseases to make that jump over to us. And we're not talking about some abstract, far-off risk. These are diseases you've probably heard of. Reptiles often carry Salmonella. Parrots can pass on something called parrot fever. And primates, they can carry some really dangerous stuff, like Monkeypox and herpes B. And finally, we've got to talk about the environment. What happens when someone can't take care of their exotic pet anymore? Sometimes they just let it go. This means the pet trade has become one of the main ways invasive species get introduced into new places, where they can completely wreck the local ecosystem. Florida is the perfect and honestly tragic example of this. The state is dealing with over 140 non-native reptile and amphibian species. You've probably heard about the Burmese pythons. So where did they all come from? A whopping 85% came directly from the pet trade. So with all these issues on the table, the really big question becomes, how on earth do we regulate this thing? And the whole debate really comes down to two totally different philosophies. So the first way is called a negative list. It's what most places do now. It basically means any animal can be bought and sold unless it's specifically put on a banned list. It's a wait-and-see approach. The other option is a positive list. This flips the whole script. Here, the default is no. No species can be traded unless it's gone through a scientific assessment and been proven to be safe and suitable to keep as a pet. It's all about being proactive. So with a negative list, it's up to the government to prove an animal is dangerous, which is a slow, complicated, and reactive game. A positive list, on the other hand, is proactive. It's based on science. And this is the big one. It puts the responsibility on the trader to prove a species is safe before it can ever be sold. This whole idea of switching who has to prove what, it's based on a concept we actually use all the time in other areas of our lives. It's called the precautionary principle. I mean, just think about it for a second. How do we decide what's safe to bring into our homes? We don't just let companies sell whatever they want and then wait to see if it causes a problem, do we? This analogy just makes it crystal clear.
A kid's stuffed animal has to be safety tested up and down. It can't be a fire hazard or a choking hazard. It can't be toxic. It has to prove it's safe first. But a live turtle, an animal that can bite you, scratch you, and give you salmonella, is sold with basically zero safety assessment required. It's like the pet trade is this weird blind spot for a rule we apply almost everywhere else.
And that's really the core of the precautionary principle. Don't wait for something bad to happen. You assume an action, like selling a new kind of animal as a pet, could be harmful until it's actually proven to be safe. It's just common sense, right? Safety first.
So, what would it actually take to put this proactive, positive list system into place? Well, it turns out there's a pretty clear science based roadmap.
The key ingredients are pretty straightforward. You use science to figure out the risks. You make the industry, not the taxpayers, prove an animal is safe. You make the whole process open and transparent so everyone knows the rules. And, this is really important, you include grandfather clauses. That just means anyone who already has one of these pets can legally keep it for the rest of its life. This isn't about taking people's pets away. And look, this isn't just some pie-in-the-sky idea. It's really happening. Governments in places like Belgium, Norway, and Luxembourg, and even cities across Canada are already doing this. They're putting positive lists into action because they see the old way just isn't cutting it anymore. Which really just leaves us with this final question to think about. What happens when we apply the same basic safety logic we use for everything from toys to medicine, to the live animals we bring into our homes? It sort of forces us to think, not just about what we can own, but about what's truly right for the animal, for our own safety, and for the world around us.